listening to great inspiring people, spending time in nature. The more things we do like that, there's a natural sort of slow drift into, I'm starting to see a bit more of the big picture. And maybe you just need to go out in the middle of the night and somewhere where there's not light pollution and just look at the stars. And that's what I do every night. I have a Philips above my bed and I just look at the stars. And
lucky you.
Remember. you can come see it.
So beautiful. Yes, absolutely. Let's stargaze together, Radha. I'm already picturing us right there, us there together. And one of the last questions that I find an important question, because lots of people are always wondering this. So to know your dosha, you do a quiz, right? Like you should answer some questions, I mean, how else can you find out what your dosha is?
The quizzes give you a very rough idea of your dosha, and they're really helpful, especially if you haven't got a chance to speak to a coach. However, they're a very sort of rough estimate of your dosha. So I wouldn't say that they're going to give you the most insightful understanding, but it definitely gives you something to start working with, which I think is really beneficial. But the way you can really understand your dosha and to really know that is to go and see a practitioner. Ideally get your pulse read, because the pulse is one of the most beautiful ways I find it the most fascinating art form, where you can go down into all the different levels and you can actually feel what the different level of elements was at birth and what it is now. That in combination with them looking at your body type, your tongue, the way you talk, the tone of voice, understanding your parental history, understanding your history, and looking at maybe how you're doing right now, even just having that conversation, that's how you understand it. So it's a very it is an art form, and actually sometimes different practitioners will pick up different things within people. So, and it changes. That's the thing, it will always constantly
because that's
changing.
another thing I want to ask as well. Like, it's not like you're this and then that's it forever, right? Like, totally. I mean, I think every 6 months or something you should kind of update or check in with the
root prakriti technically stays the same, because that is your root constitution. And then the surface level stuff, I think I change multiple times a day, just depending on how tough it is at the hospital.
Because for example, like when we started working with each other and I did the consultation form and stuff, like then from the consultation form you knew my dosha, like you knew.
Not entirely. From the consultation form and from speaking to you. Because actually I've had some people and I've seen their consultation form and I'm like, cool, done, easy. Spoken to the person, totally different, completely different.
Oh, that's not what I thought.
But that's a lot to do also with the trust, because if a stranger gives you a piece of paper and says, tell me everything that's happened in your life, you're not going to tell them everything. You're going to tell them the bits you want to tell them, and that's normal and that's fine. But as you get to know someone, you build up that connection. You are able to disclose things that maybe you haven't talked about before, or aspects of yourself that maybe you didn't like as quite as much, or struggles that you've had. And those struggles, there's nothing wrong with them. They're beautiful. They're part of your story. But sometimes we can miss them out. So yes, the forms have a very important part to play. But it's the big picture comes from either face-to-face. I prefer face-to-face in person, but also being on Zoom, you can pick up so much. It's still very personal, of course. I also think I'm very obvious, so I'm obvious with my sign, I'm obvious with my dosha. It's just it's not like I'm not a person who hides things anyway, so it was I think it was in that sense obvious. But it's good to really, if anybody's listening and is interested, I think what you're saying is it's better to go in and find a practitioner than just doing some online quiz. It's better to just, because that will only give you a rough idea of I think if you want to know how to make small adjustments to your life, a lot of people, pretty much most people, will benefit from a few core changes in their lifestyle, which is making sure they have regular bedtime and wake times, a good amount of sleep, less time on phones and computers, a little bit more time in nature, regular, probably slightly smaller meals, cutting down on caffeine, which is something I'm still working on.
So you the guys, everybody that's listening did not see Radha's eye roll, but she was rolling her eyes with the coffee.
I know. I have. I'm working on that. Work in progress.
Good.
And then those few principles, even if you just do that and try and eat a little bit more plant-based, a little bit more local and organic.
Yeah.
That's great. And the constitution quizzes can be helpful if you just want to know maybe which type of foods, what might help. And then what we've always shared is actually there's something called upashaya, trial of treatment, which we utilize in consultations, which is kind of basically trial and error. So sometimes you can experiment with yourself and try things. And in that way, the quizzes can be useful to give you some ideas.
Yeah.
But if you've got a burning question, if you've got something that's a little bit complex, or even if you just want someone to be there with you to help you through this exploration and give you that perspective, then having a real person can be really valuable. But there's, do what you can.
Yeah. Okay, second last question, because I could talk to you all night under the stars. So second last question: do you feel, and this is one, Radha, this is one, do you take your own advice, girlfriend?
Very
as a coach,
very good question. I actually find I wrote this in my journal because I have this beautiful journal that guides me through different prompts and things. And it said, what's the best advice you've ever been given? And what's the best advice you've ever given to someone else? And I was writing that after one of our sessions, and I was like, there's one piece of advice that I was giving Caro, and I'm always the worst for following it. It's about leaving space in my day, and I'll show you. I know you
love this. I like
this. You can't see on a podcast, but basically I wrote myself my sort of tenets for the month. I don't know if you can see this because of the blur.
Yeah.
You can't see it, but
I can see it. Yeah, I can see it.
Basically, there is a blank square at the bottom of my priorities for this month. I write it on my whiteboard every month.
Yeah.
And I have my, what am I going to invest in health-wise? What's some really beautiful quotes? What are like the spiritual principles I want to focus on? And in the corner, I've just drawn a box around some space, and I've just written an arrow saying, remember to leave more space. So
exactly. Yeah.
Do I follow my own advice? Sometimes. And I also learn a lot from doing consultations with people, because what we often see is, and we see a reflection of aspects of ourselves that need some work. And I'm always very open with the fact that I am a human being who is still learning. And it's always trial and error. There's always going to be things you can do. And I love the fact that when I have a chat with someone, that I can really learn from them. So I don't go in there with just I'm the one that knows the things. I'm like, I'm going to share what I have to give, but I know that there's going to be some beautiful nuggets of wisdom that be drawn out, or that I'll receive. And I think, God, but
that's a really beautiful thing also of knowing yourself well enough, because I have that all the time, especially also with yoga teaching. I'm like, I can give it out, but like when, and sometimes I do have to remind myself, like, you say this to people all the time, but do you do it? Like, are you like taking time to relax and taking time to,
Totally.
Yeah.
No, I think it's good. It's a good reminder and a really good question, because actually I think that is probably one thing a lot of us are very good at giving advice, but not so great at taking it.
Yeah.
And that's why I find things like journaling very helpful, because actually I can reflect and say, okay, I gave a couple of quite useful bits of information there. I wonder if I could use them as well. And then make a practical plan of how to implement that. So work in progress.
Yeah, because we all are works in progress. Because that would be my last question, Radha. Like, could you give us some of your beautiful wisdom and knowledge on, like, what are the three things you would give people as practical tips? Like, if you want to be a bigger and better version of yourself, which is something that you were, this is our whole conversation about, like, getting there. How do people get there?
Well, one of them, I think, is what we've just talked about there, which is about giving yourself space and time to reflect. and time that isn't filled with something. So for me, it's like, I think we spoke about it on the last session, which is having a daily practice, because you have to protect a little bit of this time, because there will always be more things to do. So it's different for everyone. Like one of my favorite things to do is, lighting a diva, like a little candle flame, and, sitting there and just have a really beautiful bell, and it just brings me back into my center. And I just try and do that for maybe, even if I don't have a lot of time, like 3 minutes in the morning, just some time that I've given to just remind myself to be here and to kind of decide my own way forward. So if there's one thing, try and find some daily practice that gives you a little bit of space, and just gives you a moment to think about, why am I doing all of this? Like, don't just get out there and do. You've got to really try and live with a bit more intent. And actually, if you don't give yourself that time and space to just be like, oh, what's been going on? Then,
and this can be as simple as just 3 or 5 minutes in the morning, right? Like, people don't have to do like a 2-hour yoga session every day.
You can do if you want. That's great. But like for me, I know when I have a little thing now, if I'm really busy, when I'm boiling the kettle in the morning, I will just go out of the kitchen door and go and stand on the balcony, which looks out over the mountain range, and I'll just stand there for like 2 minutes and just look at nature, and I'm just like, a little moment. So try and create something in your day, whether it's a walk in nature, whether it's with a candle, whether it's just sitting there in sort of a bit of silence, and even if you don't have that much time, just capture the little moments and try and protect it, and give yourself that time to focus on what your intentions are for this life, not just be dragged through by all the needs and wishes and musts and shoulds.
Absolutely. Not forget about the deep potential.
Exactly. And just create a bit more space. So that would be probably number one. Second thing for people would be to find a really amazing coach and or community, because the people that we spend time with, there's God knows how many quotes on the internet about it, but it's true. It's really true. You have to be around good people. You have the responsibility of creating your own world. The people you follow on Instagram and Facebook are changing your view of the world because of what you're exposing yourself to. The news is changing the way you see the world. The books you choose to read, the movies you choose to see, it's crafting your reality. Like,
so beautiful.
How can you wake up one day and it's a beautiful day, and another day you feel like it's the end of the world? Because it's your perspective. So I would just say, that's one of the easiest things to do. I know for me personally is to make sure I'm surrounded by people that make that reality really positive, people that empower you, that lift you up, and having a coach that can be, again, they can reframe things for you. So I know that's a beautiful and I think really fun way to change your life, is just to hang out with really awesome people.
And there's a flip side to that as well, Radha, because I think it's also knowing who aren't your people, right? Because there is also the same with food, where we say it can be medicine or it can be toxic. It's poison. So I think we also need to recognize, like, these are just not my people, and also just recognize that and just don't give them your time, or not surround yourself with certain people that just aren't your people.
Totally. And it's about just knowing where to place people. And like, you can sometimes have people even in your own family or very close to you that aren't too beneficial to where you want to go in your life. And it's never a case about judgment or, saying, oh my God, I can't talk to them ever again. It's about understanding that you change your relationship. So maybe if there's a party and it's not going to be your kind of scene, rather than just saying, no, I'm not going, you send a really beautiful present and some flowers to your friend for their birthday and say, I hope you have a really amazing time. Sorry, I couldn't be there. So it's about knowing you can still love someone, but love yourself enough to know
exactly
what's helpful.
Exactly.
That would be probably kind of point 2. I kind of snuck 2 in.
Very good. Number 2.
And the third, so many things. I'm trying to use my third wish really well. So when the genie's like, I'll give you 3 wishes, I'm like, okay, I've done 1 and 2. Oh, this one's got some pressure on it.
Yeah.
The third is to feed